All right, so here's the problem with standardization. Standardization is what ends up after crony capitalism, monopolies, and oligopolies. And I'll tell you why. Because, in all of these cases, monopolies, oligopolies, and stuff like that, in which there's just like one central supreme organization that is deemed to be the only productive organization on the face of the planet, what ends up happening is that they end up dictating the terms of what kind of employees are going to be useful to them, and by extension to the entire planet, because, well, they're the ones who are ruling the markets, right? And people need jobs to live, to earn a livelihood. And if you've got monopolies or oligopolies, who've got companies who basically dictate the market, then they're going to be dictating the kind of labor that is productive. And that sort of ends up being the standard which dictates what kind of a person or an employee is valuable to society. Now, every human being is different. Every human being has different capabilities. Every human being has different passions. And economics, traditional economics, assumes certain things about human nature that just aren't true. One of them being that, one of the assumptions that is, fundamentally true about human beings that traditional economics doesn't take into account is the fact that human beings work to the best when they are able to find meaning in their work, right? And they would only be able to find meaning in their work when they're actually able to work on what they think is important and what they think society would value. But now here's the problem. What they think is important and what they think society values, there's a fundamental dissonance between those two things, because the oligopolies are dictating what kind of work and what kind of employees are valuable to society. And hence a standard is created. A standard which dictates, okay, these kinds of work, this kind of an aptitude is what is important, and that it has a ripple effect, even though it might not be the most intentional, has a ripple effect of having the society believe that, okay, these are the only kinds of workers that are going to be important to society. And so every person is now trying to contort themselves, or at least is being driven to contort themselves to fit into this very narrowly defined box in which you're doing certain things, you have a certain type of aptitude. And I think that dissonance is where most problems are arising from, because it assumes that what the person has to offer is inherently invaluable, even though that assumption might not be the most intentional thing. What's the other thing that I'm thinking of? Let me think. Yeah, so the other thing that I'm thinking of is, if you have a puzzle, right? Like if you have a really big puzzle and you have these really weirdly shaped pieces, right? Like we've got 8 billion people on the planet, and so just think of a puzzle which has like a perfectly rectangular puzzle which has got 8 billion pieces in it, with each puzzle piece being a very unique, a unique shape that is not being replicated, not exactly at the very least, in any of the other 7,999,000,000 blah 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 pieces, right? So you've got all of these unique pieces, and they're somehow fitting together. They've got other pieces which sort of reflect. There's some sort of symmetry going on, right? Point being, these puzzle pieces are fitting together perfectly. But what happens when each puzzle piece is trying to contort themselves into the shape of a single puzzle piece, right? And then there's dissonance because they're not able to find other puzzle pieces which they can complement with, they can join with, right? So it's like when you standardize, you're unable to have puzzle pieces complement each other. And I think that's what's driving the dissonance in the entirety of global economy, because we're unable to find, we as individual human beings, and as you can scale that up to organizations and then to multinational organizations, and then to even economies like national economies and stuff, is that we're unable to specialize in the thing that we're naturally adept at, right? Naturally adept at. We're unable to specialize in those things. And because of that, we're unable to find our complementary sort of community members. A community is run when you're able to find members who complement your work. But because of standardization, we're not able to find that. And I think so that's why I think standardization is the root cause of all inefficiency, because every person is a unique resource in themselves, right? But what you're trying to do is you're trying to fit that unique resource into a box and making them perform tasks that they're not naturally good at doing. But you've got all of this competition and to earn money, to do certain things, that is causing all of this dissonance. Yeah.